Hola a todos, hoy vamos a aprender a decir números grandes en español. Today we are going to learn how to say big numbers or large numbers in Spanish. Now, this is relatively simple. Even though we are talking about large numbers, this is simple because all it really requires is that you follow a formula. Once you've identified the formula or the pattern, the rest is easy. Now we're starting above 100, right? If you want to learn how to count to 100, I will leave that video in the description, okay? So we're starting over 100. Now, as you know, 100 in Spanish is cien, right? That's the number 100. But if we want to count above 100, we use ciento. And we're still talking about the hundreds, right? So from 101 to 199, this is the formula that we use. We use ciento and the number, whatever number that may be. So for example, we have 150, ciento, which is 100 if we're counting above a 100. And what is 50? Cincuenta. 150. 163. 163. 163. So from 101 to 199, this is the formula that we are going to use. Okay? Ciento plus whatever the remaining number is. The number that remains is. Muy fácil, ¿sí? Okay, sigamos. That's 101 to 199. So what if we have hundreds now? We're talking about 200 to 900. All right? So let's look at the hundreds. 200, 200. 300, 300. 400, 400. 500, 500. 600, 600. 700, 700. 800, 800. And 900, 900. Now, these are the hundreds. Now, if we want to involve other units, such as tens, this is what we do. Okay, right, I'll say and then explain. So, 333. 333. What you would notice is that the E is only used to separate the 10 from the single digit. We do not use E to separate the hundreds from the 10. No. So we only use the E if we have a 10, only to separate the 10 from the single digit. This is why 33 has E within it. But if we wanted to say 330, we would just say 330. We would not say 330. No, the E is only used to separate the 10 from the single digit. And that applies across the board. It doesn't matter what unit we are talking about, okay? Similarly, 715, 715. All right? So in this case, we do not need the E because we don't have any separation like we had in 33. We just have 15. Right. 715. Once again, muy fácil, see? So we've done 101 to 199, and then we've looked at the hundreds. All right? So let's proceed to the thousands. Let me come over this side to make things a little easier. When it comes to the thousands, first of all, 1,000 in Spanish is mil. Not un mil, mil. Okay? This is a 1,000. Oh, before we do that, I forgot to mention something that is very important. When we use the hundreds as an adjective, right? Particularly from 200 to 900. And the noun is feminine, we must change the ending from O to A, right? So for example, 200 casas, 200 houses, all right? 300 mujeres, 300 women. So that's just something you need to remember when it comes to adjectives, when you're using it as an adjective, all right? That also applies to one. You know, in Spanish, one is uno, but if we have a feminine noun, we say una, right? So, hay 21 capitales. There are 21 capitals. Hay 21 capitales. So that's just something I wanted to mention. When we're talking about the hundreds and one, they always agree with the noun in terms of gender, okay? Now let's return to thousands. As I was saying, thousands in Spanish, mil is the word for thousand, right? So the formula is going to be whatever the thousand is, that number, followed by mil. So we have 50,000, 50,000. 77,000, 77,000. 77,000. Right? If I wanted to say 40,000, 40,000. If I wanted to say 2,000, 2,000. Simple, see? Now, what if we have other units? So we have thousands, then we have hundreds, and then we have tens, all right? So, 88,300. How do we say that? So, how do we say 88? 88. How do we say 1,000? Mil. And then what follows? 300. 300. You will notice that we did not use E, because as I was saying, the E is only used to separate the tens from single digit, okay? 11,291. 11,000, 11,000. 291. So we would use E between 91 and uno because that separates the 10 from the single digit. 11,291. That's when you have thousands, hundreds, and tens. Muy bien. Estoy seguro de que ustedes entienden lo que estamos estudiando. Estamos estudiando. Estoy seguro de eso. En todo caso, sigamos. At any rate, let's continue, of course. So that's thousands. So what's the next unit? Right? We go to millions, right? So when it comes to millions, we have the number and then we have millones. But 1 million in Spanish is un millón. 1 million. And you know that's 1 million contains, or millions contain 6 zeros, right? So un millón, 1 million. If you wanted to say 7 million, 7 millones. If it is over 1, then it becomes plural. So millón becomes millones. 7 millones. 10 millones. If I wanted to say 50 million, 50 millones. If I wanted to say 3 million, 3 millones. All right? Key point with this one. If we want to use that as an adjective, just like how we did with the hundreds, we have to remember that this is not a gender issue, but if we're using millions as an adjective and we're only talking about millions with no other units, then we have to use de at the end. Okay? So for example, $1 millón de dólares, $1 million. 7 millones de hombres, 7 million men. Once we just have million and there are no other units, right? Muy bien. That's just if you use it as an adjective. Now, what if we have millions within, what if we have millions, thousands, hundreds, and tens, right? How do we do that? So 50,300,000. So as you see, we tackle each unit in order, right? So how do you say 50? 50. How do you say million? Millones. And then we have 300,000. So 300,000. 300,000. But what if we have a more complicated number? 500,615,243. This is a much more difficult number because we have more units. 500 millones, so that's 500 million. Now we have to figure out how to say 615,000, which is going to be 615,243, 243. So that's how you would say this number in written form. 500,615,243. So just remember that when we're using this as an adjective and we only have that specific unit, which would be millions, we have to put de after it. So as I was saying, 1 millón de casas. 1 million houses, okay? Muy bien. Now, we are going to look at billions now. We don't usually count, we don't usually use numbers this large, but I want you to be the best. So I want you to know everything, all right? So when it comes to billion, it's going to be a similar formula to millions, right? We have the number plus mil millones. Mil millones is how you say 1 billion, and 1 billion would be 9 zeros, okay? That's how you say 1 billion in Spanish. Mil millones. So we just have the number and mil millones. So 60 mil millones is 60 billion. Now, fíjense. A lot of persons will think that billion in Spanish is billón, but that's a false friend. Billón is actually a trillion. So, un billón is 1 trillion. Okay? And 1 billion is mil millón. Not un mil millones, mil millones is 1 billion. Okay? And the same rule applies with regard to adjectives. So if you're using it as an adjective and you're only talking about that specific quantity with no other units, we have to put de. So 60.000 millones de dólares, $60 billion. If we want to say trillion, un billón de dólares, $1 trillion, right? But what if we have other units within billion, right? Let's see, right? So we have 3,550,240,122, right? You just go from unit to unit. So 3,000 millones, that is how we would say 3 billion. Now we have to figure out how to say 550 million. 550 millones. 240,000. 240 mil. 240,000. Now 122. 122. Fácil. So yes, and just like as I said, with millions, trillions, with million, billion, and trillion, we if you're using those as adjectives, we have to use de, right? All right. So this concludes the lesson on large numbers. Now we are going to see if we really understand, because we have a quiz to complete. So we move on to a quiz. As you see, the quiz is made up of 2 parts. The first part requires you to write the numerical form, and then the second part requires you to write the written form. So yeah, espero que ustedes estén listos para este examen. Hope that you're ready for this exam. Now, número 1. 350. So let's break it down. 300. What is that? So that is 300. And then we have 50, which is 50. So 300 plus 50 is 350. 350. Muy bien. 2. 44 mil. What is 40? 40 is 40. What is 4? I just gave away the answer. Wow. Cuatro is 4. And mil is 1,000. So we have 44,000. 3. 8,240,158. So that's a big one, right? First we have 8 million, right? 8 millones. So 8. We know our number starts with 8. Now we go to the thousands. 240,000. 240,000. 240,000. Then we go to the hundreds. Ciento. So you know we're dealing with 100. 100. 50, 50, y 8. Right? So 50 is 50 and 8 is 8. So 158. 4. 7,500. 7, 1,000. So 7,000. 500, that is 500. Muy bien. And 5, 147. You know for sure our number is over 100. 47. 40 is 40, 7 is, 7 is 7. So 147. All right. So I hope that that section was easy for you and that you answered everything correctly. Now let's proceed to the second section. So the written form. Now, you actually have to know your numbers now. 6. We have 6. We have 2. How many zeros? We have 9 zeros. So that would be what? Billion. All right. I know with billion, what is the formula? We have the number plus mil millones. So this would be 2.000 millones. 2 billion. Because we have 9 zeros. When it comes to 150, if it's between 101 to 199, we use ciento, so 150. Ocho. Now we have thousands, so what is 100,000? 100,000. 100,000. I think this is something I probably missed in the lesson. If we're saying 100,000, we don't say 100,000. We say 100,000. But it is 100, so it's not over 100. So yeah, 100,000. Yeah, it's not over 100. So 100,000. And how do we say 200? 200. Good. 9, 785. So how do we say 700? 700. How do we say 80? 80. And how we say 5? Y 5. And remember, we only use the E to separate the 10 from the single digit. Okay? We don't use the E to separate the hundreds from the 10. And finally, 500,000. How do you say 500? 500 and 1,000. 1,000. 500,000. 500,000. Vale. Eso es todo por hoy. Como ustedes han visto, contar o más bien decir números grandes es fácil en español. Muchas gracias por ver y hasta pronto.